Christian Britschgi.
Robby Soave.
Well.
Oh, I get more and more worried every week.
Well, I'm worried for you and all the trouble you got yourself into.
I got myself into.
Well, longtime viewers of our highly successful, extremely successful podcast is starting to go to our heads, the fame. We're getting noticed everywhere now for Freed Up.
I was looking it up. We are actually the 8th largest economy in the world.
Ooh.
Excluding Reason, right?
Okay.
Yeah, let me...
By what metric is that?
Acclaim. Popularity.
Okay.
Wait, no, sorry, I'm reading the chart the wrong way. We're the 8th smallest economy in the world.
You know what? That's okay, because there's nowhere to go but up.
That's right.
And that's what we're doing. You've been in trouble because of your Somali-related fraud that you've been perpetrating.
Allegedly.
The walls were closing in, the Tim walls closing in
mm-hmm.
for you. Not that he cares what's going on
a little bit of vengeance there.
With the daycares you set up, and you decided there's too much heat, time to get out of the kitchen.
Yep.
You tried to get out of the country.
Yes.
You were like, where can I go where the government will not hunt me down, they can't reach me, they can't go there, they can't touch me? Where's there no extradition?
Well, you advised me very well, I thought, initially.
You decided to go to Venezuela.
Yep.
Where they can't reach you.
Yep.
So then... Little did you know, lo and behold, the Trump administration does a very precise military operation to get you, Operation Catching Christian, cross country.
Operation Crackdown on Crack for Kids, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They came to get you.
Yep.
And they knew you were wearing like a little maybe Mexican disguise or Venezuelan disguise.
Latin.
Maybe you've got like a fake mustache and a sombrero. Yo lo tengo Christian. That's what. Yo lo tengo Christian. So they get Nicolas Maduro by mistake, the president of the country, dictator, bad guy, communist. So now we've overthrown the government of Venezuela, and it's all because of you. And you're still at large.
A little bit of accidental justice. Although, as you can see, I was worried that I, too, would be secreted off to Brooklyn, and so I've started to dress like a Williamsburg hipster, just in case that does happen.
You're kind of dressing like a Williamsburg hipster, or maybe a revolutionary, like you kind of actually look like a Latin American revolutionary right now. Although there's very little difference between a Williamsburg hipster and like a Che Guevara, like
two people's republics at this point. Yeah, I'm playing both sides here. You know,
I see.
Because you can end up in one or the other. You can end up running a communist regime south of the border, or you can end up living under one in Mamdami's New York. And so I'm dressed for all occasions.
So how do we feel about what's going on in Venezuela? Because we're libertarians,
mm-hmm.
we're anti-intervention, certainly anti-unconstitutional intervention. Don't like that nobody voted for this. Trump administration just decided to do it. I'm against, in general, regime change. I think installing new governments that are supposedly going to be more friendly to us
at the point of the sword,
in the Middle East has not worked out.
Mm-mm.
But I don't know, maybe I'm regime change curious in South America.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting Cesar pilled, Cesar being one of our coworkers who rightly hates the Maduro regime, who's actually from Venezuela and has experienced firsthand the horrors of communist governance.
And is frequently being threatened with jail by state officials there for his reporting for that reason. Yeah.
Fuck all those people.
Yeah, sure.
And really, my wonder is then we haven't really gone far enough, because Maduro's been replaced by this woman, Delcy Rodriguez, who, according to Cesar, is just as reprehensible, just as has engaged in political persecution and corruption to the same degree as Maduro.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of his henchmen, you don't get to be a vice president under Maduro by being a nice person.
Right.
She definitely is not. So a couple thoughts. So just to start with the capture of Maduro, I will completely confess, I do have a little bit of like lizard brain jingoistic pride.
Like, fuck yeah, it's awesome. Team America, world police.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing ideological or anything, like nothing about freedom or principles. It's just, it's fucking cool that we can go snatch a guy and bring him back in the dead of night, lose no casualties on our side and just get out of there. That's really cool.
Yeah.
As I wrote in the roundup on Monday morning, our morning newsletter, Maduro, he's a bad man and a worse singer. So no one should feel bad whatsoever that he's gone. Yeah, he should have he'd be singing that now. Yeah. So no one should feel bad about him not running the country anymore. He's a brutal dictator.
Right.
And this is rare, but he will, be tried in a court of law, under the rule of law, and hopefully face some justice for his crimes. Although, of course, some of the crimes that he's being charged with are drug smuggling, which we are, of course, fine with as libertarians.
Fine. Right.
But that being said, no, everything else about this is bad.
Okay.
So to begin with, we are unlike Venezuela, we are a constitutional republic with separation of powers and rules about...
So says you.
So says obviously I'm a bit of an old fogey about, things like constitutions and whatever else. But Congress says when we declare war, they didn't say anything here. Mm-hmm. And going and snatching some other country's leader is an act of war, right? This justification from the administration that
making a law enforcement justification, which, come on, nobody is persuaded by that.
It's completely ridiculous.
That's nonsense.
Because it would just
then there's no constraint whatsoever.
There's no constraint because who charges the crimes? The executive. Right. Trump would just say, or whichever president would just say, Justice Department charge this person with a crime, and then we'll execute a law enforcement operation to invade their country. So that's bad.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It's yet another. I guess the best thing you could say is that the ship has already sailed on any sort of congressional constraint on executive action.
They mostly don't care.
No one cares.
Although they did vote, the Senate voted, all Democrats and then a couple Republicans including Rand Paul, of course, who's someone who has very principled opposition and is actually consistent on this. Josh Hawley,
surprisingly,
I don't often retweet Josh Hawley approvingly, but I did this time. It was
worst person is right about something. Yeah,
he said there's no way a continuing involvement there is covered under whatever.
Yeah, no, there's literally no legal justification at all. Something else people have drawn a comparison to would be our capture of Noriega in 1989. Somewhat similar situation where he had annulled an election that he lost and was involved in drug smuggling. We go arrest him, bring him back to America, and put him on trial. And there's legal debates about that operation too, but. Yeah. The big difference is that the Panamanian government had killed an American service member in the Panama Canal Zone. And then additionally, their government declared war on us.
Yeah.
So, if you're the president can respond in a limited way to immediate threats to American citizens, that's justified. There was no justification of that. There's no similarities on those fronts here. So that doesn't count.
Yeah, legally, it just doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. On the other hand... Well, Venezuelans are all happy. They're all celebrating.
Okay, so let's talk about the substance here. Okay, so that's the legality. That's the proceduralism.
The legality, that's an X. That's not a winning.
Let's get a big red X on the screen if we can. So that's wrong. But okay, so what's the substance, right? So firstly, you say Venezuelans are all celebrating. That's certainly true of Venezuelans in our orbit. Most of the people we know who are from that area of the world like Cesar, our colleague, have suffered under this regime, and so are legitimately, of course, very happy to see him go.
Yeah.
But I noticed there's not so you had a election in 2024, which the opposition won, right?
Yes.
But now that Maduro is gone, we're not seeing some huge. You're not seeing some huge, popular uprising to oust him, right? I'm not saying that he's popular by any means. I'm just saying that this isn't producing some, groundswell of democracy in the country that, wasn't happening before, right? And also the opposition leaders, this is maybe getting a little sidetracked here, but this is actually kind of frustrating to me. You have, the one woman, Machado, yes, who won the Nobel Peace Prize. You have the guy who was their presidential candidate.
Gonzalez.
Yes. If this was your moment to if Venezuela was on the tipping point of becoming a democracy again, you would think you would, even though there's grave risk to you, you'd get back to the country and be rallying your supporters and make an issue of this. If you want the U.S. to support you here, get some cards in your hand, right? And they're not doing that. Instead, they're groveling to Trump, and it's a little unseemly, I think.
Well, but that's the problem because Trump very quickly kind of shut the door on the idea of having the whole regime collapse, he said, no, we think we can work with Rodriguez because it's like a personal feud to him. He's not really thinking of it in terms of, fostering Venezuelan democracy. Like, he literally said, well, I don't think it would work with Machado. She's a nice lady. But which then raised the prospect of, is it just because she won the Nobel Peace Prize that he wanted?
Possibly.
Doesn't seem like a good way to make a foreign policy. But if you're right that maybe it's just not workable to replace the entire regime.
I'm not saying it's not necessarily... I mean, certainly I don't think it would be workable for us, but I'm saying that, like, if it was workable, they're not doing the work to get it done right now. But then as you say, like, Trump, very immediately, his plan is we're going to cut a deal with this new leader. We're going to install another dictator is going to come to power who's just as bad, and we're going to have a little bit more pressure over her, and so we're going to pressure her to do these things that we want. And so, again, like, okay, so what are we getting from this, right? Nothing. It's not particularly honorable to see our country get one dictator out of there because he's a horrible person and then immediately start doing business with someone else who's equally as bad.
I literally just don't understand what the point was then.
Yes.
It seems like we chose, to quote Breaking Bad, the famous the Mike speech is one of the greatest speeches.
Such a good monologue,
I chose a half measure when I should have gone all the way. And Walter, I'll never make that mistake again. It's a great character moment because then he does make that mistake again with Walter because he's actually not a bad guy.
Right.
He's the evil that Walter sinks to is not something a normal person can even comprehend.
Right.
I'm worried we've chosen a half measure.
Yes, but I mean the problem though is,
and by we, I mean the Trump administration unconstitutionally to begin with. So
yes,
the full measure is certainly unconstitutional. I mean, you can vote for it.
Yeah.
Just bring it to Congress and have them vote for it.
But that's why I see no upside here because the full measure would be okay. We've overthrown the leader. Now we're going to take out the entire regime, and then you do get closer and closer to an Iraq type situation where you get rid of a regime.
Oh, please, that country's all the way over there. This country's
one is
all the
so
way
much
over
closer,
here. It's different.
Iraq never had elections. This country did have elections, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't... I mean, not every U.S. intervention immediately is going to turn into the Iraq War, but not just because every U.S. intervention doesn't immediately turn into the Iraq War doesn't make them all okay, right? Like, just because it's not the worst case scenario. It's kind of like the other side of the coin of what people call like Iraq War syndrome. It's like, oh, we're scared to do anything now. But it's like, okay, but just like because the worst case scenario happened, just because that doesn't immediately happen again doesn't mean that it's okay. And I mean, the regime is not an elected government. It's not a popular government, but it is one with a lot of muscle, right? They have these militias, they have the security forces, they're in bed with the drug cartels, right? Like these are people with guns who would resist any sort of transition and violently so. And so if we were to inject ourselves into the middle of that and try to shepherd in some sort of democratic regime, it would probably end up very bloody. So there's no upside to this. I mean, it's flashy and cool that we send Delta Force in there to get the president, now former president, put him on trial. I'm shedding no tears for that. But other than that, it's just like we're eroding even more, legal constraints on the executive's power to make war. We're kind of, I don't know, we're dishonoring America a little bit by just cutting more deals with authoritarian dictators.
Do you think the State Department has like a big risk board in the Situation Room, and that's their understanding of foreign policies? Well, if you're expanding, you want to get more troop deployments, you want to occupy more territory so that you get more troops every turn. Well, you're America. The next thing you do is Venezuela, Greenland, and I guess we'll know when he invades Kamchatka that this is really a risk board understanding.
Two thoughts. Thank you for bringing up Risk, which is a very flawed game.
Very flawed.
So we're going
to talk about that.
Number one reason it's flawed is it gives policymakers clearly, I assume there is this risk board.
The bad ideas.
It gives them this impression that if you have more territory, you get more troops and resources, and it's the exact opposite. The more territory you have, the more resources you have to expend holding it.
Risk is not a military tactics game like Axis and Allies, which is a little tries to mimic tactics a little bit.
It's
or
Yahtzee.
Is it really a diplomacy is the actual politics game as they seek to expand your holdings in a little bit more of a quasi-realistic sort of way. Risk is just rolling dice over and over and over again.
It's three-dimensional Yahtzee, right?
Yes.
It's
it
literally
ends with
just
everyone angry.
Yeah.
Everyone hates each other at the end. So me and my friends played tons of Risk in high school and college.
Same. Yeah.
And it took us a long time. We recognized that it was a flawed game. And so then I spent a lot of time, I'm a game designer type person. I do our Dungeons and Dragons. I spent a lot of time making custom rules to make it more balanced. I came up with a morale system for the armies that if you had won a certain consecutive number of battles, you would have a morale that replaces a 1. If you roll a 1, instead of 1, you get whatever your morale is.
Oh, nice.
And we'd also played the Lord of the Rings Risk board, which has leaders and strongholds. The leader gets a +1 to attack for the army. The stronghold gets +1 to defense. And we did other things, and they don't have increasing book sizes in the Lord of the Rings one. So they're all when you turn in for the big deployment of troops, it's always like 10 or 15 troops. What that does is create a stalemate situation where attacking is just too difficult because to overcome a leader in a stronghold is just because defense wins ties.
Yeah.
It flips. In the normal game, attacker has this huge advantage because you're rolling 3 dice and they're rolling 2, but defense wins ties. But if you're in that dynamic, plus the defense gets a +1 to their roll, you get wiped out trying to attack anything. So you just end up with these huge stalemates. And then I made all these custom Risk boards. I did one for like the University of Michigan, one for the Zelda universe, and I came up with all. And finally, we're like, what do people who really like board games? What have they moved on to? Like, Settlers of Catan, and even that's I think a deeply flawed game. But that was like an introduction to now we
there
play
can be cooperation actually.
Now
then
we played we play a lot of Agricola and Wormspan and things that are.
Okay, I got another. Just while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, and okay,
you're paying rapt attention to every syllable I uttered.
I'm sorry, that's right. I have to pay attention. I'm not allowed to criticize you on air.
Yes.
These are some of the rules we have posted.
Yeah.
You can't see them,
Yeah.
our readers at home. But okay, so here's an idea, another amendment to Risk to prevent stalemates. You know how in history military technology will go from favoring the defense to favoring the offense? What you could have is like at certain points, like certain turn numbers, have the tiebreaker switch from defense to offense.
Ooh,
right?
That'd be fun.
So then that would get people to maybe like hold back their attacks, or that would break if you have a stalemate because the defense is always winning, then that would all of a sudden you would get like an offensive advantage. Then people would really let it loose. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Something to suggest.
If we're still making Risk boards. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not a good game, but it seems to be the.
Oh, but you know what? Okay, to tie it back into real world events.
Yeah.
So what's the best continent to have in Risk?
Is North America.
Yes, exactly. And we already have North America. In the real world, we already have North America.
Yeah, people naively think it's Australia because it only has one board. Idiotic. It doesn't have enough troop deployments.
Yeah, there's no yield.
I mean,
there's
you can win with Australia if you're playing with 6 people. Also, the dynamics of the game change a lot depending on how many people you're playing with. If you're playing with 6 people, someone doesn't even get a continent. Someone just camps out in Japan.
Right.
Africa, on some boards, has an additional border that makes the continent. The continent's already pretty.
Yeah.
More real world parallels. It needs a little assistance.
Yeah.
It's not the continent you want. North America is by far the best continent. Yeah.
Yes, but so in real world, we already have the best continent, so we don't have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
Like we can sit here and enjoy this great gift that history has given us by having this massive defensible continent where we have on a strategic level everything we need. So we don't need to go around doing these things, right? Overthrowing other governments and whatever else. Like, what are we getting? The oil? That's ridiculous, right? This is why we're doing these interventions to bring more Venezuelan oil onto the market and reduce the global supply of oil by $1 a barrel or whatever. No, this is crazy.
It's all craziness.
Yeah.
My most popular custom-made Risk board was my Mario Universe one. I think I did a Mario Universe one that people liked, and I did a space one of my fictional science fiction mythology that I came up with. People like that one too. I used a little what's not a protractor that makes you draw a circle perfect
compass
to make some perfect circles and
nice.
If you looked at these, you'd be like, oh, you did such a good job when you were in kindergarten. I'm like, no, I was 25.
Let's put it on the refrigerator.
It's basically that. I would have my mom take it to her nursery school to laminate them so that they didn't you couldn't spill Venezuela
with
Mountain
federal
Dew
tax
on them.
dollars. That's what they were spending it
Yeah,
on.
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Are we done with Venezuela? We should be done
Well,
with Venezuela.
hopefully, yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think our government is. We need to talk about another failed state, the state of Minnesota,
Yeah.
which has just been the main character of this year a lot. Lots going on in Minnesota.
Yeah. I almost regret making this the site of my many alleged frauds. So
Yes. How dare you? Sad events.
Very.
A woman was shot and killed. Renee Good is her name. Her name's been public record now. She was in her car. She was shot and killed by an ICE officer. There's video footage of this that everyone on social media has watched 800 times and has weighed in on, and everyone is very expert on ballistics and angles and all, well, but this justification or, oh, this cuts against, this cuts for. When I watched the video, I thought, I can't really tell, frankly, whether it was, so the argument is over. Was it a legitimate use of force for him to shoot and kill her because he thought the car was coming at him? From benefit of hindsight, I don't actually think she was trying to run him over.
No.
I think she was trying to get out of there.
Yes.
They did tell her to get out of your car and stop moving, and she didn't follow that order. But is his perspective, was his fear for his life reasonable? Is basically what it hinges on, from whether he could be prosecuted or not. And that's going to be some more expert, the prosecutor has to decide that, whether they think they can prove that it was not reasonable, his behavior.
Yeah, and I mean, federal prosecutors aren't going to do anything here. Like, already the federal government has excluded the state police from access to any evidence or anything like that.
And that's horseshit. There should be an investigation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Assuredly.
Absolutely.
I mean, Tom Hammond said there should be an investigation.
Yeah. And
Chrissy Noem said she was a terrorist, and
immediately the federal
appalling statements from most officials on both
Chrissy
sides.
Noem as well as J.D. Vance. No, I'm pretty horrified by this. Maybe we'll argue about this.
Okay.
But okay. So to begin with, all right, let's just roll the cameras back a few minutes before the shooting. Yeah. This is a woman in her car a few blocks from her home, observing people doing law enforcement operations. This is not Fallujah. This is not occupied territory. You are allowed to do that. This is the United States of America. You can, observe the police. You can drive your car down the street. That's allowed. ICE is in Minnesota, doing these shows of force and walking down the street. Why? Because Trump wants to provoke people who hate him in blue districts, right? They're looking for things like this. I mean, I don't think they literally wanted to go and gun this woman down, but they like to provoke people who hate them, and that's what happened, right? So already and also secondly, citizens don't get a check from the government to know how to respond to law enforcement in difficult situations. Law enforcement does, right?
Right.
That's their job, right? And if you're trigger happy and fly off the handle in a dicey situation, well, you were trained to be able to comport yourself a little here, and that clearly didn't happen. I mean, you can say and I mean, clearly just by what happened, you can say that she behaved. She made a mistake, which was trying to drive off when people were starting her car. That was, I mean, by the fact that she got shot, that was a terrible decision.
Don't drive off when the police say, stop, get out of your car.
But I feel like this is like so many other cases where, yes, the person is resisting arrest or getting in the officer's face or committing a crime. And so that, she wasn't committing a crime.
Right.
That, cause, it's not like law enforcement just rolled up onto the scene and gunned her down. But,
well, and they can't, even if she was trying to leave the scene without permission, the police can't just shoot you for doing that either.
Yeah.
They can shoot, again, the justification is reasonable threat to the officer's life. So is the car coming at him, and he doesn't take out the gun until when the car's backing up, there's no gun, and then it moves forward toward. Now, I think he absolutely could have gotten out of the way and not been harmed, and this was an unnecessary.
He did get out of the way because he shoots her and her foot's on the gas, so the car continues to go forward, and he does get out of the way. So in that sense, it's unnecessary.
When he shoots at her, I mean, he shoots. The first bullet goes through the front windshield.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she's coming at him. So I think it's going to be ruled.
The car's going forward, but she
Yeah.
has. I mean, if you look at the New York Times analysis of the video or whatever, like the steering wheel is cranked, the wheels are going away from him. Maybe he
Right,
plausibly
but the
didn't
car
know
hasn't
that.
turned yet. Right.
Yeah, he
Yes.
plausibly doesn't know that. So again, like there's this legal question of whether he reasonably thought the car was coming at him,
Right.
and also the officer in a separate incident months ago was dragged by a car,
Right.
and was injured as a result. So like,
Yeah.
you can understand from his perspective why he would be jumpy in these situations.
Right. I mean,
but
that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't get him anywhere because
No,
then
sure,
you got to
yeah,
do
yeah.
that with her too. Well,
Yeah.
did she have a really bad traffic
Yeah,
stop
sure,
the
of
day
course.
before
Yeah,
was
No, I'm-
fearful of law enforcement? Like none of that. It only matters if he thought that car was coming at him. How fast? I mean, you can accelerate pretty quickly. Now, I've seen videos both ways because then a lot of conservatives were sharing this video from a different angle that is sped up. Where if you watch the sped up version, it looks like she mows him down with malice. But the video sped up.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you slow it down for very precise frame-by-frame analysis, then it looks like he has all the time in the world to make a different decision. You got to watch it you got to think of it at its normal speed. Now, I don't love the idea. We should expect, like, how do I say this? The police shouldn't have to take unreasonable risks. I think we would all accept that being in law enforcement carries some risk, and they get a special ability that none of us have.
Yeah,
they have
right.
the legitimate use of force.
Yeah, and-
they get to stop you. We have granted to them the right to use violence as policy.
Yeah.
And so that should come with certain responsibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have, if you fire into I mean, it could have. She did hit on the gas. She's out of the way by then. She hits on the gas and she crashes. She's dead. She crashes into something. I mean, you could have taken out more people. I don't like the idea.
But that's why you don't. And this is what their training says. This is why you don't fire into a vehicle driving away, right? Unless
Right.
it's literally going to mow you down.
Right.
Is because the person is dead in the driver's seat with their foot on the gas, and that vehicle can go anywhere, right? Yeah. So
But-
I mean.
He thought it was coming at him. Or he's going to say he thought it was coming at him, and that is, I suspect, going to make it a legitimate use of force.
Whether the officer should go to jail or not is a question that a jury is going to have to decide based on that.
Well, first,
that
the
particular
prosecutor is
question.
going to have to decide
Whether
whether
to
they
bring
can
charges,
whether they have
Yeah.
enough to demonstrate it, and then a jury would decide,
Yeah, so that legal question is not something you're going to be able to just intuit from watching the video. But as a citizen, you can have a reaction to this, and I see it as a horrible, crime in the not in the legal sense, but maybe
Right.
in the,
I mean, I would have liked everyone. I thought the responses from so many people were shameful on a lot of different sides. I mean, on on the conservative side, just absolute I saw so many people say case closed. He was winged, so it was legitimate. There's no. I'm like, well, it's.
And these horrible.
I'm not sure it is. We got to look at that a little bit more closely. I can't make up my mind based on an 8-second video clip that nothing went wrong there. Video lies to us? How many times do people have to get duped by misleading short clips on social media? Remember when everyone thought the Covington kid was staring at a racist way at that Native American man, and then you saw the 2 hours of additional footage and it wasn't that? I mean, that was a major concern, an important event in the formulation of modern conservative alternative media stuff.
Yeah.
So hold your horses here. And the statements from, she was I still don't know was she a anti-ICE activist person? Was she blocking that? None of that matters. But people are bringing that up like that matters. On the one hand. On the other hand, I don't know. I saw a lot of blue sky posts that were, arrest and execute him before the Trump administration can spirit him away to safety. That I was not at all to my liking.
I find that rhetoric overheated, but I feel like it's also directionally correct. Where it's
No, I don't
who's at
think
fault
so.
here? So like you mentioned, okay, police should exercise restraint, but
Yeah.
also they have a difficult job and they are encountering dangerous people often.
You lib cuck.
I'm gonna go a little. I'm
gosh.
gonna go a little libtarded here, by starting by defending the concept of policing. Right, you're performing a necessary, vital function in society, and you are allowed to use force, and sometimes you need to use force. Although you should exercise restraint, right? But the mission of ICE, both in this instance and just in general, is illegitimate. So I don't I don't find it like...
Say more. What do you mean? I mean, they're doing immigration enforcement.
Yeah, they're doing so like I'm an open borders guy, so I think like immigration...
So you think it's morally illegitimate. You just think it's policing that shouldn't be done.
I think it's just in general, it's policing that shouldn't be done. And then B, the particular thing that they're doing, which is just like, patrolling the streets looking for someone who doesn't have their papers is, even if you think, deportations are justified, whatever else, that just is un-American to me. So
the right will say, we have to do this in places like Minneapolis because they won't do law enforcement, their sanctuary city. They won't do immigration enforcement.
Well, it's not the state's job to do immigration enforcement. And
well, it's the federal government's job, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, but again,
this is immigration enforcement.
But this is bad immigration enforcement. Yeah. This is showy. This is a show of force, right, from federal goons, and we shouldn't put up with that. Like, this is like the libertarian nightmare of like masked federal agents walking down the streets trying to enforce federal laws, against victimless crimes. Yeah, like again, there's ICE. We can maybe talk about the Portland shooting and what the administration is saying happened there, but like there are criminal aliens, right? And I mean, it doesn't bother me if someone commits a crime, they're arrested and tried, and then instead of putting them in jail here, we send them back to whatever country to serve jail time there. That just seems like a logistical question about what cell they go in, right? But like the exercise of just someone is in the country illegally, and so therefore, and has committed no other crime, and so therefore we're going to send troops out onto the streets to, arrest them and kick them out. Like, no, I find that exercise completely illegitimate. Maybe the federal government shouldn't have inserted themselves in this situation and caused this to happen.
So I was talking to, hosting a two-way. That's one of the shows I do. Yesterday afternoon, and it's there's like 5 of us discussing, debating issue, or 4 of us, and the cool thing about two-way is that like it's me and Emma Jo Morris, she's very conservative, Nina Turner, she's very liberal, and the cool thing about two-way is there's audience participation. People like call in and give you their thoughts, so you actually get to hear what not just other pundits think, but what actual people paying attention think. And there was a guy who's called in before who says, it's sad a woman died, but I voted for this. I don't want deportation of just the most violent or unsavory. I voted for and I want to deport everyone who's in this country illegally, and I support efforts to do that. And then I'm trying to. That's much further than I would go. Like, okay, what if that? In order to accomplish that, are you comfortable with, armed, occupied zones, troops on every corner? What if we routinely see then more police and people interactions where someone who's not an immigrant, she was a citizen, white lady, dies? At one point, do we say, your goal? I understand you and I disagree, but you want to do deportation of every last person who's here illegally. The effort required to do that is going to turn us into a police. We're Americans are correct to like their rights. We don't like traffic cameras. We don't want to. Like DC is getting rid of the speeding cameras, and we're all everyone is celebrating that. If you don't even want to get if you feel your liberties infringed when you get a speeding camera ticket in the mail, we're going to have to do that times 1,000 for the deport everyone thing. Yeah. So that's the argument I tried to make.
So, okay.
Because I don't think you can talk. I think it's hard to talk people who think that they should have done. You and I know why doing it the right way is very difficult. It's hard to immigrate here. It's really annoying. If for high-skilled people, it's annoying in every category.
It's impossible.
The government has its own. Oh, we already have too many. Journalists. We can't have. So we can't hire someone who is fleeing communism, who has special expertise in why communism is bad to write for a libertarian newspaper because you, the government, have decided we already have enough journalists. Why can't an American do that job? Go die. I say to the government. But people, there are a lot of people, a majority of the country think there's people who came in here illegally. That's the crime itself, and they got to go.
Yeah. Okay.
So I try to take a practical approach with that. Okay. Well, we're gonna have guards in every street. We're gonna have, like real ID. We're gonna real idea. Our real IDs are gonna get really, really IDing all the time.
So, and I think people who had voted, at least most of them who aren't like extreme authoritarians, would say, I don't want that, right? But this is the next level down then. It's like, okay, so we don't have the resources. We're not going to be able to have this comprehensive police state that kicks everyone who isn't allowed to be, isn't legally allowed to be here out of the country. So instead, what we're going to do, and I think this is the Trump administration's like explicit strategy, is that we're going to have very showy immigration enforcement.
Everything they do is showy.
Everything they do is for an audience, right?
The showiness is very annoying.
Yeah, and it leads to situations like this, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, this is the next step down. And so do you like this? Do you want to see more of this happen? Because it's going to keep happening. I mean, there's been multiple. There was a ICE shooting in Maryland over Christmas, right? Christmas Eve. There was this ICE shooting in Portland. Like, this is going to keep happening. And so if you say, well, I didn't like this particular instance, but I support the overall mission, it's like, well, the overall mission is going to keep producing situations like this, particularly because it's a very contested thing that you're trying to do, right?
It's funny because this is the same argument I've used against liberals for gun control.
Yeah.
Like, you say you want to confiscate, you want to do a gun buyback confiscatory thing. You want to what? Okay, you want to go to door and start having the police collect up all the illegal firearms that are owned by people in the United States. That would take an authoritarian police action that would be explicitly racially biased and coded.
Yeah.
And you would, no one who, if you're blushing as you should at, stop and frisk, the gun confiscation thing would be, again, that times 1,000. And most liberals don't want that level of authoritarianism.
But so then what if the liberals like, okay, but we should do something here? And it's like, okay, well then your something would be, finding random gun owners and pulling them over and trying to confiscate their guns on the street. And then lo and behold, someone gets shot during one of those exercises, right? Like there's no upside to any of this. And, there's like a very... I understand that there is like you can look at that video and say on a legal level, on a very technical legal level, this agent maybe felt,
because the legitimacy or not of the operation doesn't matter from the standpoint of whether he is culpable of some kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's a situation that we've set up by pursuing this course of, very showy uses of force of immigration agents, going to very liberal areas where people are very in favor of immigration.
And again, I don't know enough information about what happened yet to render an actual verdict. I don't know, was she given conflicting instructions by the police? Sometimes that's happened in previous videos where there's an incident and you find out the person was told contradictory things.
That horrible shooting in Arizona from a few years ago. Do you remember that?
In the motel.
Oh my gosh, that is the worst.
Brutal.
That's probably that's one of those videos
ever.
that I wish I'd never watched.
Yes,
right? Yeah,
it's awful.
If people haven't seen it, I believe it was in Mesa, Arizona. This guy traveling for work. He had someone in another hotel guest. They were just like drinking in his hotel room, and he was showing her some like pellet gun or BB gun that he had.
Legally,
no crimes being committed, no malice, anything like that.
It was up against the window, I think.
And someone outside the window called the police saying, hey, there's a guy with a gun in his hotel room. SWAT shows up. They're yelling at him to come out of the hotel room. He's in the hallway. And the SWAT guy is like...
screaming at him, on your fucking feet!
But giving him contradictory... Yes. Yeah, it's like, come towards me, stop, hands in the air, crawl towards me, and then eventually just guns him down.
At one point, they told him to... Again, he is completely... He was of no threat to anyone at any point. He's
weeping.
Certainly of no threat to anyone now. They have him on his knees. They say, put your hands either behind your back or on your head and like crawl forward on your knees, which is not possible to do. Yeah. So then he puts his hands out to stop himself from falling, and they say, you do that one more time, I'm going to shoot you. And he's sobbing like, well, I can't move forward on my knees without, it's an involuntary response as you're going to fall on your face is to put your hands out. He does it again, and they shoot him and they kill him. It's awful.
Terrible.
It's awful.
And no justice there for
just awful.
Officer.
Yeah. I'm not. The police should not have some automatic benefit of the just like anyone else. There is a presumption of innocence, and they should be. They should treat citizens, and some of them don't. They should treat citizens with respect and. Everyone's rights need to be respected.
So, this situation, it isn't that. It's not the Arizona situation.
No,
but
not at all.
It still doesn't look very favorably to me for the police.
Well,
So, here we
we'll
are.
see.
Yeah.
All right, we've gone through Venezuela, Risk, that video. You had something you wanted to express about one of Comrade Zohran's appointees.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This
yeah.
guy, I find him just very dangerous. And one of the reasons why is because he appointed, it's like your arch nemesis or something. Yeah. She should be, she's the Joker to your Batman.
Yeah.
Cea Weaver, is that her name?
Yeah, Cea Weaver, who is this longtime far-left communist tenant activist in New York. A first wave gentrifier too, which maybe we can get into. But so she's run various left wing housing justice groups fighting for rent control and expropriation of private property.
Yeah, fighting for full communism.
Right. The idea that anyone would charge anyone else any sort of money to live in property that they own is anathema to her worldview. So it's actually I'm kind of mad at myself actually for not being on top of this story, but like
we all know you weren't doing your job this week.
Yeah, right. No. I see. The thing is, like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this situation back in your like college reporting days, where it's like there's someone in that world that you know, and just like that they say insane things all the time, and so you're just like so close to it that like it doesn't register. It doesn't register to you that like other people don't know this person in their long history of insane shit. And so she gets appointed to
jaded.
lead. I'm jaded, right? Yeah, I'm numb. I'm numb now to her commie bullshit. And so she gets appointed to lead the Office of Tenant Protection or Tenant. I can't remember the exact name of the office that Zohran appointed her to. But she gets appointed, and then the New York Post does a story just like going through her Twitter feed, which I'm intimately familiar with, just pointing out all the insane things she said about how owning a home is white supremacy, and we need to elect more communists, and we need to seize private property and all this kind of stuff.
Yes. What was really funny about her approach, there's these videos that have of her from like 2018, 2020, 2022.
And actually, real quick, I should mention Reason, Jim Epstein at Reason, in reporting on the New York's disastrous eviction moratorium, did an absolutely, in my mind, devastating interview with her, where he interviews these landlords, these Chinese immigrant landlords who are, being bankrupted by having some Brooklyn hipsters just like not pay rent in their apartment for 2 years because the government said they didn't have to. And he's like, don't you think that's bad? And she's like, well, I guess that's just the risk of being a landlord, This
is the government would come in and make it illegal to collect rent.
And he's like, okay, well, who's going to pay for the housing? And she's like, oh, the federal government can just print the money to pay for this. It's like,
it's modern. She's a modern monetary theory, probably.
Right.
Yeah. What I am envisioning is a world in which the housing is owned by a collective and people are paying 30% of their income in order to live in their housing. If your income is zero, you pay zero. If your income is $500,000 a year, you're paying 30% of that. And the government is providing the government is the sort of owner, or not even the owner. The government doesn't have to be the owner, but the government is what's making sure all of that sort of works in cash flows.
The debt to GDP ratio right now is the highest since World War II. So how can the federal government also afford to start subsidizing rental housing costs?
The federal government prints money. The federal government can provide money for those.
So it's by printing money?
Sure.
But anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
She is, during peak wokeness, she's selling the agenda of harming property owners, making property have less value, taking property, making it so you don't have private property, and it's like the benefit. She's like, this is a good thing because it will hurt white people.
Yeah, right.
That's what she's saying.
Yeah.
No, it's a good thing. White people will suffer.
Right.
That's the selling point of the project to her.
Right. Yeah. So this is another. It's like again, it's like you're too close to the issue that like you kind of miss how like normal people, of course, are going to be more horrified by this than you are, who's seen it for a while. But it's like, so she keeps making this case that like rent control will lower the values of property, right? And that's just like that's a duh. Like that's obviously true, but it's like, okay, that's the whole point of rent control, right? Like I don't see that as a particularly scandalous admission, because it's like, well, if you lower rents below market rates, of course it's going to lower the value of the property because that's lowering the yield you can get on the property, right? There's a kind of like two-part kind of commie conspiracy that she completely is bought in on here, which is that if you can absolutely tank the value of rental property to zero because it can't support itself through market rents, then all the properties will go into tax foreclosure, and the government can seize them for pennies on the dollar and then run them as public housing, which is her goal, right? It's a stupid goal because while New York politicians are willing to bankrupt rental housing by passing ruinous rent controls that she supported, they're not going to spend the money to upkeep. Like, no one wants to spend billions and billions of dollars to run housing for people, right?
Right.
It's not going to happen. So, like, what you've succeeded in doing, and this is what's happening in New York. It's a slow rolling development, but this is what will happen if nothing in the law changes. Is all these rent stabilized properties, or at least the ones that are heavily rent stabilized? Because in New York, sometimes you'll have a building that's like some of the units are market rent, some of the units are rent stabilized. They will all go bankrupt. Many of them are going bankrupt, and then no one really knows what's going to happen, but it's probably just going to the properties are going to fall into disrepair and become vacant units in a city that has the most expensive real estate in the world.
Yeah, Zohran on day 2 was touring some slumlord's place where the tile's fallen off and it looks really bad and they won't fix it.
It's because they're not legally allowed to fix it.
They won't fix it. It's rent control. They can't raise the price on the thing. They can't afford to fix it because they can't improve the building and then charge you more.
Yes, and in fact, they have his administration has explicitly said this in court filings. They have intervened in bankruptcy proceedings where this company is trying to acquire bankrupt rent-stabilized units, and he is objecting to their ability to do this. And one of their reasons for objecting is the legal rents you're allowed to charge will never cover the necessary repairs here. So this property should go to the city instead of to a private landlord because we've ruined the ability of private property owners to upkeep this, to follow legally mandated health and safety codes. So his administration is admitting that they bankrupted it. It's interesting because everything she said, he has also said.
Zohran.
Everything that's hypocritical about her background. The New York Post had a follow-up story where it's her parents own a $1.5 million home in Tennessee, which
they're champagne socialists.
They're champagne socialists. Yeah. I mean, $1.5 million home, that's a nice home, but it's also not it's not in Tennessee, maybe that's a little more fancy. But yeah, they're champagne socialists. Yeah, she's talked about how gentrifiers are white supremacy too, and it's well, you're the gentrifier. You're the gentrifier, right?
Yeah, so, he believes everything she does. They were on actually one of the clips of them. They were interviewed together years ago on my old co-host Brianna Joy Gray.
Oh yeah, sure.
On her podcast, and she's expounding on her confiscate all the property or make property have no value, and then I don't think it's Brianna, it's the other guy who used to host the podcast says, Zohran, do you have anything you want to add to it? And he's like, no, I co-sign whatever Cea says. She knows more.
Great,
whatever Cea says, I'm on board for.
Right. Yeah.
And that's back when he was an assemblyman or he was a relative no one.
Right.
He was actually on Rising.
Yes, you interviewed him. Yeah.
I totally forgot this. Me and Ryan Grimm years and years ago, but this clip has resurfaced since where he's talking about maybe he had some bill or something to help taxi drivers who are going bankrupt because the taxi medallion is
the government
worthless.
Cartel that they forced them into was then disrupted by Uber, and so the taxi medallion you needed to have in order to operate a taxi, the value fell from they bought it at an extremely high price and then it has collapsed, and so all these guys are going bankrupt, and he was doing some sort of hunger strike to raise awareness and to get the city to crack down on Uber, bail these guys out, whatever else.
It is sad for them that to participate in this system, you had to join this cartel, and now this cartel has been outcompeted by the market, and that is sad for you. This situation should have never arose because they should not have artificially limited the number of taxi drivers.
It's funny because he's actually really inconsistent on this issue of whether you should bail out government-supported cartel participants or not. Because on the taxi medallion side, he's very pro, right? You bought the taxi medallion and the government cartel, you should be bailed out now that its value is going down. But when it comes to the halal carts, this is his one deregulatory initiative, right? It's a similar system in New York where there's a certain limited number of food vending street licenses. And so all these halal carts that you see on the streets of New York, generally what they do is they pay, it's an illegal arrangement, but they will pay $20,000 a year or for 2 years to rent the license and operate your cart. And he wants to just open that up to everyone,
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. But clearly he's not sympathizing with the owner owners of the halal license, right? So it's like, which is our government supported cartels good and worthy of being bailed
He likes
out?
halal food, probably.
Yeah, maybe there's a cultural sympathy that he didn't have with the Uber drivers. Okay, so something else I would want to say on the Cea Weaver issue. Two things, right? If you saw, New York Post, because this is what the New York Post does, posted up in front of her apartment building after, all these stories have come out, and she's just been raked over the coals on social media, justifiably so, in my mind. She's a public official. This is public scrutiny. She had kind of a meltdown on the street and ran back into her home. And, obviously on a certain human level, I can feel bad for you. But I also feel like that makes you kind of a dangerous personality. See, because Zohran, for all his faults, he has a very natural charisma. He can put all these like past statements he's made about seizing private property or whatever.
He's like, well, I'm a communist.
Yeah, whatever. He's going to dance around. He's affable. He can participate in a democratic system where people are going to yell at him. She cannot.
This is getting to some Richard Hanania Women's Tears article. Do you remember that one?
I didn't read that one, but I can't, given all the things Richard Hanania has written, I can't perfunctorily agree with it. But there is a sort of like cosmic worry I have when I see things like this, because it's like you cannot participate in a democratic system when like all your commie bullshit comes back and blows up in your face. You melt down because you can't handle the public scrutiny. In a different environment where instead of people voting on things, it's the people with the guns deciding, someone who can't handle public scrutiny, the crying communist would be putting you up against the wall.
I
Yeah.
see.
So that's number one. That's the one thing I wanted to say. Number two is, while people are justly outraged by her being appointed to his administration and should be worried about what's happening, most of the damage she can do has already been done by the rent law they passed in 2019, which effectively prevents landlords from upkeeping their buildings and then charging rents to pay for the cost. Like that's already set in motion, these buildings going bankrupt. And so like she's already won, right? And so there's they don't need to do anything else. They don't need to do anything else for their dream of private property going bankrupt to happen. So something to keep in mind.
Are you doing dry January?
Yes I am. I had a little bit of wiggle room over the Christmas season. If you go with the liturgical calendar, the 12 days of Christmas, I was not dry during the 12 days of Christmas that extended into January. But since, yes, I have not drinking right now.
Even though the Trump administration, in their wisdom, talk about some good things I like coming from our government, just changed some food and alcohol related guidance. HHS did. The food pyramid, out with the old, in with the new. Whoop. That I hate. I've now talked about this on like every video I've done this week, so apologies to anyone watching who's
the Robby
heard this too many times. The Robby completionists know how much I dislike the initial food pyramid for just being nonsense. And
like 11 servings of
11
brain.
servings of bread. You can't possibly have enough bread. The new one, still fruits, vegetables, still good, but is very good protein. Growing boy, need your protein.
Yes, as I said on Twitter, I'm a paleo libertarian, and I like the new food pyramid. I just don't think the federal government should be saying that.
But the alcohol guidance is great too. Dr. Oz was like, there's a social benefit to drinking, and we have undersold that as a government making recommendations, because the government recommendations are 2 drinks for a man and 1 for a woman. That's all per day.
Per day? No.
Well, most people, if you're going to drink, people do all sorts of different things. But, at a party, like where you're going to plan to have a lot of fun, a woman is not going to limit her. It's guidance that's not going to get followed. I mean, people who shouldn't drink at all shouldn't drink at all. But it didn't comport with reality. And it's nice to hear the government say, what we were recommending you do does not comport with reality, so we're not recommending that anymore.
Very good.
I like that. Yeah. It makes me happy.
Yeah, Dr. Oz, he actually had a kind of a funny line, too, where it's like, he's like, don't have it for breakfast. But then on Twitter, he's like, brunch doesn't count as breakfast.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah. Wait, so what are the new limits?
No, he just
or whatever?
said, just don't drink too much.
No,
it was real vague.
Do as you please. Very good, very good. Yeah, I'm doing dry January, and I always, for Lent, I always give up alcohol.
That's a significant chunk of the year. Lent and January put together.
I inevitably fail dry January, Lent, because there's God is watching.
Yeah.
I normally do better. But so I do that for my own health, both physical and spiritual. But I enjoy a beverage or two, as you know.
Yes.
And
I have tied one off on occasion.
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
No Zens for you, though.
No.
We don't have to go all into that. But I completely accept the Dr. Oz's statement that it's good for socializing, because I don't know if you've done dry January or something like that.
I did it once, yeah. It was 2 or 3 years ago I did it, yeah. It was fine.
I don't know if I'm just like...
Do you socialize less well without drinking?
Yeah, I do.
You're harder to talk to? Or you think you're harder to talk to, or do you find it harder to talk to other people?
It's the latter.
Harder to talk to other
sometimes people will say it's like, I'm afraid to stop drinking because I'm worried, people won't enjoy, I'll be less fun for other people or whatever. I don't worry about that at all.
Yeah.
I'm convivial.
Yeah.
But I do notice that I just have like
your interest in other people's.
Yes, my patience for other people's nonsense falls precipitously when I don't have a drink in my hands. And I don't know if that's because, you go from doing something you enjoy doing to not doing something you enjoy doing. Is it, are you just naturally irritable as a result? Or is it that being slightly buzzed gives me a little more grace for a natural level of irritation that exists out there in the world?
It depends what kind of drunk you are. Because some people, alcohol makes them easier to tolerate.
Yeah.
It makes them more fun. It maybe makes them more flirty. Some people, it makes them more belligerent. It makes them more of an asshole. And those people got to watch it.
Yeah.
Because that is not fun. That ruins it for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is why I sometimes like... it's interesting. Like, you could be doing the exact same amount of physical damage to yourself.
You're a flirty drunk. I'm always like, keep your hands to your goddamn self.
That is slander. That is not fair. I'm gregarious is what I am.
Yes.
So you have two people who are doing the exact same amount of physical damage to themselves, but with the amount of alcohol that they consume. Someone is going to say, you're an alcoholic and you need to cut down because you're a fucking asshole when you drink.
Yeah.
Whereas the other person is fun and lively. And it's like, you don't have a problem. What are you talking about? Let's get you another one over here.
I love Rick and Morty. It's a funny bit from that when it's the episode where they're doing like the Avengers and they're meeting with the other superheroes. Rick and Morty are considered superheroes, and one flies. His name's like Vance something. He's like a Tony Stark type character. He flies in, cocktail in hand. And he's like, "Sorry, I'm late. It was happy hour," and everybody laughs. And Rick goes, "Okay, I was also late because of a drinking problem."
That's great.
There's cool drinking. And cool drinking is cool, and keep it cool. And if it's not cool, if you're not cool, then you stop doing it. Mm-hmm. Then you need to bring it down. Mm-hmm. He and I were talking about this on Free Media yesterday. And if you can't bring it down, then you got to bring it down all the way. Yep. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gambling's like that too. Anything that people do in excess. Some people, I think some people have just addiction. Is part of their which like their personality is not addictive. They would get addicted to anything, and those people really need to watch it.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just a total pseudoscientific theory. I
think that's wisdom. That's wisdom.
Speaking of
we don't
drinking,
need these pyramids of pseudoscience. We can, have observations about human behavior.
Speaking of drinking, I started rewatching. I'm making my my fiance watch it. As well with me, Mad Men, which is available on HBO.
Yeah, sure, now. Yeah.
So I'm going through Mad Men again. I've watched it numerous times. It's in my top 3 with Sopranos and Breaking Bad, the golden age of television. It's so great. They just drink all the time.
It's absurd. Yeah.
They drink, and they're drinking
liquor. Yeah.
They're drinking straight liquor. Mm-hmm. They're not mixing it with anything. Yeah. I mean, it's a TV show. Maybe they did in real life. I don't know, but it's trying to be pretty accurate.
Right.
You had a bottle at work, and you filled your drink, and
could not be done. Could not be done today.
I can drink a good amount, unlike you, and be fine. But that would knock me out. Which is, I guess, why Don Draper's always taking naps. But,
right? Yeah, they're always sleeping on the couches in their desks or in their offices.
And they smoke in every scene, which that's I think accurate too. That people just smoked
all the time,
constantly.
Yeah. There was in San Francisco, they were like renovating this old theater there. And as part of the renovations, they scrubbed, what looked like just like a bland brown theater ceiling, and they just like deep cleaned it, and there was this beautiful floral design. And what was the brown on top? It was from people who had just like, when you had audiences and every single person had a cigarette in their mouth. Yeah.
There's an episode, it's like the 4th or 5th episode, where Don and Betty get back from some awards show, and then the next morning they wake up and they're just fits of coughing from all the smoke they inhaled. And it's really fun. The show is so good.
Yeah.
It's just everything about it. So you've watched it.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Only one time through. I've watched, some of the other prestige shows. I've like The Sopranos. I will watch just like habitually. I'll just throw on an episode.
Yeah.
So I know every line in that show.
Yeah.
Mad Men, I'm less familiar with. It's a good one. It's it's less interesting to me than The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, because I need some like life or death stakes, to like really be engaged. And I mean, Mad Men is very good. It's very interesting, but
it doesn't have life and death stakes.
It is ultimately a workplace and marital drama, right?
Right. I like what it's saying about the state of America and capitalism. And I actually have a take. You ready for a take?
Okay, yeah.
It's we're rolling. It's very Randian in its
elaborate
philosophy. Our lovely lady.
Yeah.
Because the characters are all flawed human beings. Don Draper has done a lot of reprehensible things. He does a lot of reprehensible things to women. There's so much mistreatment of women, particularly in the early part of the season. Made it difficult for my fiance to watch it. He's like, oh my God, they treat the women so badly. Like, well, a simpler time, a better time, maybe.
Not for everyone.
Not for everyone. But in some sense, the protagonist of the show, is Don Draper, but it's like the advertising, what they're doing, trying to sell ads, trying to sell products, is always situated as a positive enterprise. It's like that never comes under attack. In fact, the characters who criticize it, like the couple, hippie characters who show up from now and then, are always shown to be shallow, evil,
envious.
Right? They would do it if they could.
Right.
The Don Draper's idea that advertising exists to reassure you that what you're doing is okay. That's his like philosophy of what he said. The cigarette product, it's toasted. It's reminding you of some comforting childhood. It's how can I make you feel pleasant and to make you feel comfortable, and we're selling that. But that's good.
Yeah.
Like them doing that never comes under attack.
Yeah.
There's never some realization where it's like we're bad people or we're bad. They might be bad people because they treat people badly, but their enterprise is not bad.
Okay, let me provide some Randian pushback, if I may. Okay, so like the Randian idea about why capitalism and production is good, right, is because you're expressing yourself through your production, right? And you're not, by selling things, you're not requiring anyone to serve you, right? They are electing to participate in your greatness, right, for their own ends, right? But there's also this concept in the Fountainhead, particularly, of second-handers, people who do things just because it's what they think everyone else wants, right? So is advertising in a way not just like the industry, like the second-hander creating industry, right? Oh. It's getting you to like a product because of what you think other people think, and that's what Don Draper is trying to do, influence people's behavior as opposed to create something that exists of its own merit and is an expression of his own
I wonder if a more dedicated Randian would see it that way. I mean, it's explicitly Randian at times. It has Bert Cooper, the older, wiser owner of the company, who often imparts valuable knowledge and is pretty much shown to be, as a moral businessman, as upstanding font of knowledge, is Randy. He has a copy of Atlas Shrugged. He mentions Ayn Rand two or three times. She's you'll love her, Don. This is the book of the century kind of thinking.
There actually is...
And he's the one who's not... because Roger has his business partner was in World War II and has bias against Asian people from his experience in the South Pacific, and it's Bert who's much older and is Randian and thinks that's getting in the way of them making more money. He wants to do business with the Japanese car companies and so on and so forth.
Right. There's that, which produces some hilarious scenes.
Yes.
I have to go back and watch it. So Ayn Rand did a famous interview with Mike Wallace, newscaster, in the 60s, like shortly after Atlas Shrugged came out, where he actually asked her...
Not Mike Wallace. I know who you mean. It's not Mike Wallace.
Is it not?
It's what is that guy's name? Donahue.
No,
Phil
that's
Donahue?
later. That's from the 80s.
Okay.
But he asked her explicitly about, like, if we have your vision of unfettered capitalism, aren't we just going to be at the mercy of men who work on Madison Avenue in black hats, so advertisers, right? And I don't remember if she addressed the question of advertising explicitly in her response. Obviously, she offered a defense of capitalism, but I don't remember if she offered an explicit defense of advertising or what her response was to that. So I'm going to have to go and watch that video, and we'll talk about it next week. So.
I like how a lot of the early episodes are like this. I'm not sure if the later episodes are too, but often... I love when an episode of a prestige television has its own, like, very light theme. Like, not like a very special episode. This is about friendship the way, like...
Friends is, yeah.
I was going to say a Full House or something, or Boy Meets World. I liked Boy Meets World, but there's some light theme, and the ad campaign they're doing is part of the theme. And that, like, there's an early episode that spotlights Peter Campbell, who is kind of at odds with Don, and he's kind of like, I got ideas. Why aren't I being taken seriously? Yeah. Because his only value to the firm really is that his great-great-grandfather had a famous last name. They're part of like an initial wave of Dutch immigrants to New York, and they owned a lot of property, and they don't want to. They want to keep old money people happy.
He himself is kind of a form of advertising.
Yes, for the firm. Because, see how we have this old money type person. That's all that matters, because he's not very good at anything.
Right.
And he's not very creative with his ideas. And the ad campaign they're doing is for a steel company. And they're trying to say, Don's idea is to make it about how... steel built all these great cities, and the guys, but he's like a very folksy country guy, and he's like, I don't really care about cities. What do we? But it has to do with like when you came to New York and what your view of the city is, and it fits Pete's frustration with how he's treated at the company, and then the episode is called New Amsterdam because he's Dutch, and that was like an initial name, I think, for
it was the first name,
New York City. So it's all great. I like all that.
I'll have to go back and watch it now that it's on HBO. So it's one of my many subscriptions. So
we just watched one where it's almost about the Jewish diaspora experience, because one of the early characters who Don, one of his potential lovers, is a Jewish woman, and they're doing an ad campaign then for tourism to Israel. It was very interesting, given how in the news Israel and everything is.
Oh, right. And Pete Campbell, he explicitly refers to Israel as a communist country, right? Because, Israel at its earlier iterations was kind of like a socialist experiment, right?
Yeah, and in that same episode, Don goes to like a kind of hippie, like poetry reading type thing, and then it's Jewish people, and they're reading about, so it's Jewish but anti-war and hippie versus Rachel Menken, the character I was referring to, who's this successful Jewish. So it's showing you different aspects of the Jewish identity and the Jewish relationship to Israel. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
So good.
Good slice of history there.
Really loving it. Yeah. Really loving it.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch it. Yeah.
What else we got on the list for today? I had the Trump, more of your housing policy. Trump says
we got to ban the
institutional investors. I got a lot of pushback from this because I said this is stupid, and they don't own a lot of housing.
They don't own a lot of housing,
and this is not what's contributing. But then Lindsay, my co-host on Rising, said, well, but when I tried to buy a house, all the houses on the block got bought up by Blackwell or whatever it is.
Blackstone, yeah. So I've made this mistake before, and so for readers at home, it is Blackstone that purchases single-family homes, not BlackRock. Which is another private equity firm that is not involved in the single-family housing market. Okay, so couple things. So firstly, I guess I would ask you, what percentage of U.S. Of single-family homes in the United States do you think are owned by these large investors? If from watching the news and what people say...
If I was just watching the crying and whining about this, I would think it was like 40%.
Yeah, it is 0.5% of single-family homes, right? They purchase, up until last year, they purchased about 1%. The large investors purchased about 1% of homes each year, and that's new purchases. That's not all homes. That's just homes that have sold, right? They purchased about 1%. Owner occupiers, like your co-host who allegedly can't get a home, she is among the 80% or so of owner occupiers who are, responsible for new home purchases each year. And then the delta there, the 20% or whatever, is smaller investors, predominantly small-time landlords who will own less than 10 homes, right? So this is a very small portion of the market. It was zero before the Great Recession, before credit got massively restricted and prices collapsed, because it makes, I wrote an article about this for a reason that's up on the website right now. The owner occupier is almost always going to outbid the institutional investor because they have to absorb all the costs of home ownership as well as additional risks and costs of having a tenant and the conflicts that are inherent in the landlord-tenant relationship. I don't mean that in like a class struggle sense, just like the tenant wants you to replace the oven and you don't know if you want to, if it makes sense or not, right? So like the homeowner is always going to spend more money than the institutional investor, almost always, right? And in fact, since the Great Recession, when the institutional investors, for the first time ever, basically started investing in single-family homes, that started during the Great Recession. And then since then, the number of single-family homes that are offered for rent has been declining year over year over year. So people are getting really exercised about this thing that peaked a decade ago and is declining, right? That's the other thing to keep in mind. The real activity of institutional investors in the market right now is build-to-rent communities. So, a developer goes out there and builds a subdivision. Maybe back in the day, they would have sold all the houses. Today, they are, some of these, about 30,000 a year are built out of 1 million single-family homes that are built each year. They're renting them out instead. And so that's what a ban on institutional investors, which I don't even know exactly how you would do that or what that would look like. Or certainly Trump is saying he's going to do it on his own because that's what he does with everything. That's. I
know there's a bill to do it. I'm sure Josh Hawley's in support of it.
Yes, there is a bill from Jeff Merkley from Oregon and Tina Smith, senator from Minnesota. That would basically
Minnesota.
Yeah, right.
I've had enough of the state of Minnesota.
Tina Smith is actually one of these she flies under the radar, but she's also a left wing.
Well, they're talking about. We didn't even mention this, but Tim Walz is not going to run for re-election.
Do you think that's because of our last episode where we
think so.
Excoriated him as a
we said he's
eunuch,
creepy,
skeevy.
Yeah, Amber said something to the same effect on free media. We have not been very kind to him, and nor should we, because he's awful.
Well, so now that
we've run him out of the public square.
I guess, in the interest of fairness, now that he's not running anymore, I just want to say, fuck Tim Walz.
Can't stand that guy. But they're going to, I don't know why she would want to do this, but Amy Klobuchar polls a little bit better than other Democrats in that state. So they want to see if the club wants to give it a go. Doesn't her name, Klobuchar, it sounds like a Pokemon name to me, doesn't it?
You'd know more than I would, but
yeah, we got Pikachu in the back. Pikachu
I guess I don't. Once you're already a senator, I guess I don't really know.
Why would you want to do real work?
Right,
the senator
you definitely
anything.
don't. Yeah, so I guess maybe that would be the reason you would want to is you could actually, if you had some interest in actual public service, or I
guess there's more
goals,
you can literally accomplish.
There's more you could do. A governor, I feel like if you're ranking every public position, elected position on things you can actually accomplish, probably governor is actually top of the list.
Yeah.
State government.
You can accomplish for your state.
Yeah.
Amy Klobuchar's making policy.
Well, she's not making any
Congress
makes no policy, so she's not really doing anything. Yeah. I feel like once you burn.
We all know the senators are all named characters.
Right.
Some of the governors are NPCs.
Right.
Yeah. In this storytelling environment we're in.
Yeah.
All the senators are main characters.
But I guess it's just what else? Yeah. You just want to change. I don't know. Mid career switch. I don't know. Yeah. What do you do once you hit that? Because she's already hit the ceiling of it's not a glass ceiling, because it could happen, but she ran for president and didn't go well.
She could run again one day. She could be picked for VP.
Yeah,
she could become the coalition leader. She could succeed Chuck Schumer. I think that's not out of the realm of possibility.
She was your neighbor for a while, right?
We lived in the same building in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. She gave my dogs a friendly pat. Yeah.
Oh, so you'd be sad to see her go back to Minnesota.
Yeah, nice. I don't obviously like her policies at all, but she seems like a nice lady otherwise. Because she lived in the building, that was during our favorite year, 2020.
Oh yeah, what happened?
And
then?
so, it was just a true dystopia, right? Because first the left-wing protester, first everything shut down because of the pandemic. Everyone has to wear masks everywhere. In DC, the mask vigilance was off the charts.
You had to wear it in your own building.
Your neighbors would report you for being insufficiently enthusiastic about wearing a mask.
All right, French Revolution style.
You had to affirm that you love the mask. That you'd wear it even if there was no pandemic.
Right.
It was that level of happiness.
I'm going to wear it after the pandemic. Yeah,
I think it's better. You had to affirm that it was better than seeing somebody's human face.
The world has become a better place because we're doing this bullshit.
Because we can't do anything and we have to wear masks.
Yeah.
So that happened.
You got yelled at on the street.
I got
outside, right?
I think I just have one of those faces that makes people, perhaps women in particular, go "fuck you" or something.
I got to restrain myself during this podcast.
Yeah, it must be hard. It's hard to sit next to me.
I just look at I look at Ayn Rand and that calms me down a little bit.
You wanna slug me one? I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna close my eyes. Keep talking.
I had this old lady come and spit in my face.
She spat in your face?
She spat in my direct. I'm exaggerating, but she
spat in your general direction.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's completely insane.
Because I was on a run outside by myself, not going to wear a mask while I'm heavily breathing.
Yeah, of course not.
All over my, it's insane. It was the summer.
Absurd. Yeah.
It's insane. The whole thing is
90
insane.
degrees here. In 90 degrees, 90% humidity.
It was a radicalizing experience that drove me to the brink of insanity.
I remember watching your descent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But justified, of course.
I was going to become the Joker. I was gonna go full Batman villain over this. DC was unpleasant because of this. Everything's boarded up. The left-wing Black Lives Matter protester people come in, set a bunch of cars on fire, deface that church.
Yeah, St. John's.
They don't have to follow social distancing rules. No one enforces them on them. They smash all the windows. They go up and down the street, and unless you pledge your allegiance to Black Lives Matter, then they smash your window. Very bad. Conservatives all say this is irresponsible. This is awful. We would never act this way. Then Donald Trump loses the election and they do the same thing.
Yep.
Then they do that to the Capitol and they have their little riot and they throw their little tantrum. And we're still in a pandemic and it's still masks are required and still everything's shut down and left-wing people are rioting and right-wing people are rioting. And then there's just a tank in front of my apartment building because I lived very near the Capitol. I think they wanted to secure Amy Klobuchar. I think they were like, let's make sure Amy is safe.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching, armed National Guard soldiers get out of their tank. They're all in, it looks like a dystopia. I'm like, this is a science fiction dystopia. Everything is shut down. All the windows are smashed. There are rioters of both political extremist factions, and there are armed guards coming to keep me and Amy safe.
Yeah. Well, again, that's why, thank God we got rid of all the armed guards on the streets, right?
Well, right. Going back to your earlier point, I think it is, I do agree with you. I think it is a healthy American tradition to not want as a default state of affairs armed guards on every street corner, etc.
Yeah.
We're going in asking, where's your pay? Let's see some identification. You know what I mean? I don't want to be pushed around, man.
Right. Particularly because, I remember, because I moved back to the city in March 2021. Yeah. So, it had become a little bit less of a, green zone. But, the security cordons emanating from the national, the Capitol complex, National Mall, were still, absorbed a huge portion of the city, right?
When they blocked off the Capitol after J6. It was really annoying. The Capitol was directly in my path to get to where I tape my show.
Right.
And it was pretty annoying that I used to be able to just, I ride my little scooter, scoot, right next to the Capitol.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the mall is a great place to go jogging, right? 'Cause one of the few places in the city where you're not stopped at red lights every block, right? And it just
sometimes I would just do laps around the Capitol.
Yeah, just massively shrank for a while.
It was annoying.
You get down there. Yeah.
It wasn't the most evil, actually it's 5 years since the day or something, or 4 years, I can't count. It was not, and it's become a religion for the for Democrats, like, oh, you have to observe a moment of silence for January 6th.
So I've seen people suggest on social media that they snatched Maduro to distract from the anniversary, which is ridiculous because they also, like, the right loves to talk about January 6th, too, as the Patriot Purge or whatever fucking nonsense.
It's very silly to act like it's on the level of 9/11 or whatever.
Of course.
It was also very
It's very bad.
and
It's bad. Yeah, it's not good.
But they did treat some of those people who got charged, like Enrique I wrote about this, Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys. He wasn't even there. And they're trying to, again, and they're imagining this was some like well-organized plot to occupy the government, which it absolutely was not. He gets like 20 years or something because he's charged with a terrorist plot.
Yeah.
It's not
No, I mean, a lot of these guys, like, many of them should definitely still be in prison, but most of them were overcharged, right? Yeah, I can't. I'm shocked at the.
So you said too many lib cuck things, so now I gotta pull you back the other way.
I was saying I had no sympathy for the crying communist, right? Is that based?
Yeah.
Maybe that's like old school zombie Reaganism based. Yeah, it's not enough. I do gotta say, yes, like because they had like a little memorial march, some of the people who got pardoned, and I just can't imagine. I participate in January 6th. I get sent to prison for 20 years. Right. That's where I'm gonna be.
Right.
And then I'm pardoned and I'm out. To like get back into it.
Get in a march again.
I would be putting my feet
up. I would not
up.
be marching.
I would be, back at my job at the hot dog stand or whatever.
Which is probably
else,
the case for the overwhelming majority of them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're gonna not do any political participation.
But some of these guys, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a crazy year. We lived through that one.
This is basically the podcast. It's us decompressing from 2020.
Having the PTSD from 2020. Well, you would do it. You would go cover some of the. I mean, I went there for J6 because I lived right by there. I would run into you covering the Black Lives Matter protests.
Yes, I was not there for the. I was in the Burbs house sitting for the night where they set the church on fire.
Yeah,
but I was there for the next couple days. Because it was like a fascinating time. Yeah, it was chaotic, but it was a fascinating thing to witness. But then also, I was there. Part of me was there for the same reason that many people were there, which is there was nothing else to fucking do because the entire world was shut down.
And they gave you a pass.
And they gave it. Yeah, we got a special little. Oh man, okay. I got to complain about some liberal journos. This memory still really grinds my gears. Really pisses me off. So I'm down there. On one of the days, I'm down there with a former video guy who used to work here, Mark McDaniel. And they had all these security cordons and gates and whatever else. And so there's a curfew. So if you're a normal citizen, you're not allowed to go express your First Amendment rights. Yeah. But if you're a journalist, you get special rights, apparently. And so we mocked up some very, ludicrously amateurish press badges, which was literally just press printed on a piece of paper, shoved in a lanyard. And then our boss, editor-in-chief Catherine Maggie Ward, gave us a little like note from mom that we put in our backpack saying that like these people are journalists doing journalism. If they get picked up by the cops, call this number and I'll say they're allowed to be out there past dark or whatever, right? But anyway, so we're out there doing our thing and we're trying to get past some security cordon and we're like, we're press, can we go? And the cops are like, no, get out of here. And then another cop shows up on the scene, this Politico journalist who's like, those guys aren't press. You're not real journalists.
What?
And I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, you just printed that badge out. I'm like, where did you get your badge? Where did you get your badge? You just printed that out. What, did you get it from the Journalism Licensing Bureau? No.
There's no such thing.
You just printed that out too. You just had slightly better paper. You know?
Oh my God. That's funny.
That still pisses me off. Yeah.
Yours was in like Comic Sans.
It did look really ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're all fucking journalists,
That's right?
And also the First Amendment does not say journalists get special rights. Freedom of the press means like freedom to print things. Right. It doesn't mean that
who engages in journalism
is a journalist.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You don't need to. It's not a priesthood. It's not a. It's not a. There's no union for it. There's no. Well, I mean, there's literal unions for it,
which we do not participate in.
No.
Well, I guess aren't you a union member technically?
No. Unclear.
Yeah.
I can't say much. That's not a reason at my other place of employment. I can't talk about that.
Okay. Very well.
I'm not in. Oh, I can say that I was not in support of there being a union. That would not surprise any of our viewers. But
who's the libtard now?
Well, I do think. I have actually seen, without specifically addressing anything at my other place of employment, I do think overall unions in journalism have been one of the worst examples of because I'm not against private unions. And there might be private if there are workers at a private company and they decide to organize, and that's fine. It's government unions that we're against, the police unions, the teachers unions. I think I can see an argument certainly for unions to protect workplace conditions in a kind of like manual labor, or where all the labor is very similar, to make sure people get promotions or compensate if what they do is all very the same. In media and journalism, where each person's job is so idiosyncratic, the idea of trying to standardize pay or hours or conditions just makes no sense. And obviously...
And also your production is very easily measured on an individual level. Yeah.
Easily measured on an individual level. And also the gatekeeping effect you can have by... And I have seen in the industry is when you set minimum standards for pay or for hours or for whatever. I mean, how do people break... It's very much an industry where... You need to break into it by being like an intern or some lowly paid person, and then you prove that you're good enough
through the quality of your individualized work.
Right. And if you I mean, I was paid when I first started out. I got my first job for like the Daily Caller. I think I was paid $25,000 a year. There's no way, even back then, even 15 years ago, you cannot survive on. I mean, you can technically. It's a meager existence. If you said, like, you can't, the minimum you could pay me was like $50,000 or something because the union negotiated that, they wouldn't have hired me.
Yeah.
It'd be bad. I'd just never get a job.
This is how, even I think like a lot of times, the union organizers in these workplaces are, doing something they think is they're trying to help people. They see the person making $25,000 a year and maybe think in their mind, they should be getting $50,000 a year. So we're going to have a $50,000 minimum salary.
And then that person
But that means
nothing.
that the $25,000 person is just never hired, right? I saw this to give an even more extreme example in an industry maybe you think should be unionized. But so I used to be a salmon processor up in Alaska.
That's kind of the platonic ideal of a place that should be unionized, right? But you're going to tell me no.
I think this actually highlights the trade-offs here pretty well. So I worked at a plant that was not unionized, and we were, it's like onshore fish processing, right? And then we were next door to a plant that was unionized, right? The conditions at the unionized plant were better. They worked 12-hour shifts and had some guaranteed day off every so often. We worked 16-hour shifts and had no guaranteed days off. So I think by the time at one point I'd worked 16 hours a day for I called it a shift squared over 16 days in a row.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you start to go insane after a while.
That's a lot of salmon.
Yeah, it's a lot of salmon. I still have the nightmares. But
do the salmon cry out in the night, Clarice?
Salmon are a hard animal to feel sympathy for. But the flip side of this is that plant was, it was more experienced people. It was harder to break into. Whereas my plant was like felons and alcoholics and people who can't go back to any other continental United state because they have like 8 DUIs or whatever else, right? And so it's like, okay, the conditions are worse, but also the bar of entry for people who are literally unemployable and would be homeless in any other situation is lower, and so that they actually can make some money and survive. So that's the trade-off for the industry that has like the best case for unionization, because it is, undifferentiated manual labor. But in journalism, it's just like your work product is very individualized. You can assess people's individual merit, and then on top of that, you have the exact same consequences of your excluding new entrants. Yeah.
Why don't you have a novel yet? Why don't you? That seems like such a Hemingway type origin story, right? I worked at a salmon processing plant, and here is my novel about the American experience and me, and right?
Yeah. So I actually, you're right. I'm just not entrepreneurial
Yeah.
enough. This is why I need the union protection.
Yeah.
No, when I came back, I actually did have aspirations of writing down my memories of the plant, but my hands didn't work, and so because I was in the row room where I had to pick out the salmon roe from the guts going down a conveyor belt, and just 16 hours a day sliding your raw hands across a hard, cold plastic conveyor belt meant that for like a year afterward, they would just like seize up and tingle randomly. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's real manly man stuff.
Yeah. So anytime someone calls me a beltwaytarian,
cocktails, sipping, latte, liberal, milk toast. What's the soy boy? Remember that was a
soy
thing for a while?
or whatever. Right? Yeah. I know that it's not true. So.
Well, I'm glad that's true for one of us. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, you like your
I've never done have I ever done real? I guess I did as like a summer job. I did like manual lawn stuff that was
stuff work,
not nearly as there was no raw salmon involved.
Yeah, I like to call it my Vietnam. So.
All right, I think we'll leave it there for the day.
Okay, very good.
Sounds good. Thanks for watching. Tell us how we're doing, and we'll see you next week.